Lego 2K Drive is out right now and it's a $60 full price game. I just played the heck out of it and I've got a review for you. Hopefully it helps you decide if you want to purchase it. Let's go. All right, let's get straight into it. This is a long review and I just don't want the video to be super long. So I'm gonna try to get through everything as quickly as possible. The first thing is, let's just list on screen all of the game modes or all of the stuff that you can do in the game. First is the single player. You've got story mode, the cup series, races, mini games. Story mode obviously is the story mode. The cup series features races from the story. It's a 4-race cup in which your finishing position determines the amount of points you earn for each race. The winner is whoever has the most points at the end of 4 races, and that is again a solo experience, so you're just playing against AI. Race mode is just a race selector. You can select any race in the entire game and play it. You don't have to load into the map, you don't have to drive to it, you just play the race that you want to race. If you want to keep playing it over and over again, you can. And lastly, there are 2 different types of minigames. The first I'm calling Tower Defense. It's probably got a better, more official name in the game, but it's basically you defending 3 different towers from exploding robots. And the other is Rescue Mission, in which you rescue Lego NPCs from zombie-like hordes that are trying to attack your car. Moving on to the multiplayer side of things, there are 2 different multiplayer forms for this game: play with friends or play with everyone. These are pretty self-explanatory, but there are little things that the game doesn't tell you, such as when you're playing with friends, you can't progress your story by completing the races that you're racing, but you can actually complete your on-the-go challenges, your collectibles, and your world challenges, and you do earn cash from racing with friends, and you can earn XP from the before mentioned activities, but I'll talk about that a little bit more in the multiplayer section of the video. For the play with everyone mode, you only have 2 options. You have race mode and you have cup series, which are exactly the same as the solo experience, but with real players instead of NPCs. All right, let's get into the story. The thing that stands out the most with this story is not the story arc, not the protagonist or the antagonist or the cutscenes or even the final races. What stands out is the dialogue. Now, I haven't watched any Lego movies, even though people have told me they're silly and they're good, so I was caught off guard with how self-aware and funny the dialogue was. As we've seen from lots of different forms of entertainment, when movies or games try to be self-aware and funny, there's a fine line between pulling it off well and utter disaster in the form of cringe-worthy moments. This was not that. From the very start, the characters were well voice acted, the writing was good, and it played well for a Lego context. I have to hand it to the writers on this one. It was very silly. That being said, the story itself was super watered down and the ending was anticlimactic. I wish the Sky Cup, which is supposed to be this big race in the sky at the end of the game, was a bigger event with more variety. I wish that it was actually a cup. Every other cup event in the game features multiple races, and this one was literally just 1 race. Now, the race itself was awesome, but I just wish there were more of them. I played it like 4 or 5 times because I liked it so much. All in all, the story itself wasn't great, but the gameplay is solid, and so I don't have any real game-breaking complaints here. Moving on to the progression. So, this actually seems very well paced. If your goal is to complete the story as fast as possible and you just run through the story races and quests, there will be a point where you will need to grind XP to get to a certain level to open up the final biome and continue progressing. So the choice is yours. Complete the side activities on the way to the races or just rush through the races and do the side activities when you need them. The other option is to just go back and keep doing the races if that's what you prefer. Even when you repeat races, you still earn XP from them, but it is a lower amount than the first time you completed it. There were 2 grinds that I personally needed to complete because I was rushing through the story, and that was to get from Class B to Class A, and then to level up to level 24, leading up to the finale race, the Sky Cup. Had I just naturally played the game, I probably would have eliminated all of the grinding that I had to do. So like I said, it's paced really nicely throughout the story. The progression does stop when you hit level 30 though, so I'd be interested in what Take-Two, the developer's plan is for either raising the level cap or introducing some sort of prestige type system with future updates. Let's discuss loadouts here as well, because this goes hand in hand with progression. The vehicle stats are tied to your level. Then the vehicle's own bonuses get applied to those stats as well. And as you level up, your vehicle gains speed, acceleration, health, and handling. Then on top of that, you can earn perks that will again act as a bonus to those stats. When you get to max level, the differences between the vehicles will be very, very small and will likely be determined by what perks you have enabled as opposed to the vehicle's bonuses. The loadout feature lets you select a driver, a road car, an off-road car, and a boat to be in one loadout, and then you can save several different loadouts for easy switching. Real quickly, we can touch on the graphics or the art style of the game. As you can see by the background gameplay, they've absolutely nailed the Lego look. This really shouldn't be any surprise to anyone, as there have been plenty of Lego themed games in the past, and for the most part, I think it's an easy theme to replicate. Where I think they did a really nice job though is the UI. All the elements are easy to read and understand. It's not overly complicated, and there aren't a million menus to go through to get to what you're looking for. There's really not much more to talk about here. Everything looks great and there's no complaints. So let's move on. The racing and handling model of this game, let's talk about that for a moment. This game is somewhat of a crossover in terms of actual racing. It feels a lot like a kart racer. You've got boosts and power-ups and battle mechanics and drifting. However, the open world and vehicle switching during terrain transitions adds an element that isn't found in other kart racers. Each vehicle handles slightly differently, and each has different speeds and does different things better or worse. For example, the off-road vehicles are not quite as fast as the road vehicles, but they seem to be easier to drift. Not by a lot, but enough to notice. The water vehicles are slower but feel much more affected by the boost. And so when you are going through your races, you can actually time your boosts, your power-ups, and your drifts to maximize your speed through each section of the race. That's actually not something that I found very many online players doing though, so if you do master those types of mechanics, you'll probably do pretty well in the multiplayer. In addition to that, track knowledge seems to be crucial. Each track has insane shortcuts, and knowing them before you get into an online race lobby is important. When racing against AI in the story mode, it honestly doesn't seem to matter. The game was designed so that each race will always be competitive with the AI. You could run a personal best on a course and beat the AI by 4 seconds. And then the very next race on the exact same track, you could run 30 seconds slower and beat the AI by 3 seconds. It seems like they're programmed to stay with you for the most part, no matter how you're doing in the race. Where that becomes frustrating is when you're racing super clean and you should have a huge advantage, but the AI is with you going into the final turn and they happen to use a power-up that stops you in your tracks just before the finish line and they steal the victory. Now, it didn't happen all that often. It didn't seem to be linked to a class or a difficulty either, but when it did happen, it was the most frustrating thing to deal with. As far as the racing itself goes, it's insanely fun. All of the best kart racing elements are present, and they feel great to activate. The race mechanics were very easy to understand at early stages, and I think that ultimately equates to more fun for more players. There is also an element of depth which provides a nice skill gap when headed into multiplayer. Basically, to be extra fast, it takes a lot of practice, but most players can easily understand how to be reasonably fast. Next up is the world design. There are 4 biomes in this game at launch, each with their own style, feeling, and terrain. Turbo Acres, which is the biome you start in, has very few events and serves as sort of the training area. It gets you used to the mechanics and isn't super big. Big Butte County is the second biome you unlock, and it's much bigger. It has a desert theme and starts to challenge your abilities with its events, quests, races, and collectibles. Prospecto Valley is the third biome you unlock, and it's lush and green. It has a similar size and event list to Big Butte County, but it offers a lot more water events and opportunities. All 3 of these biomes have areas that flow into one another and are very easy to traverse. Hauntsboro, on the other hand, is absolutely terrible. There are so many natural barriers, which makes driving and boating across this map a huge chore. The disappointing thing about that is that it's probably the coolest theme out of all of the biomes. It's very Halloween, and the races have some really unique traps and obstacles, but simply driving from one event to the next is just so annoying that I kind of hated being there. Unfortunately, most of the end of the story mode takes place in that biome because it's the last biome you unlock. Aside from that, I really had no complaints, and in fact, I really appreciated the challenges and the uniqueness of each of those biomes. Next up, customization. This is actually where I have to sort of bow out and give you guys a disclaimer that I really wasn't a Lego kid. I don't have a very solid knowledge of how to build with Lego bricks. I do plan on learning because I'd love to create some real life cars like the R34 Skyline or the VW GTI, but as of right now, all I can tell you is that you can literally build brick by brick. You can make anything you want, and so to me, that's a huge positive for the game. Unfortunately, it becomes a bit useless because you can't show it off to your friends. At least we couldn't when we tested it. I tried using custom cars in one of my loadouts, and the game makes you change it before being grouped up with a friend. And the same thing happened to my editor. So unless I'm missing something, custom cars are not allowed in any of the multiplayer modes. And speaking of the multiplayer, as I mentioned above, there are various ways to play with either friends or with match-made lobbies. The match-made lobbies are basically speedless. You select a class and a type of race, either the Cup Series or single races, and then it matches you with others who chose those exact settings for you to race with. At the end of the race, you can stay in that lobby with those same people, or you can back out and search for a new one. It's pretty simple, and the racing is super fun. The rewards for racing online are just not that big though, but obviously you aren't really there for the rewards, it's really more about having fun. Sometimes you can actually load into lobbies with just you in it, in which case the game will fill the lobby with bots to start the race and then replace those bots with actual players when they find some. Unfortunately, there aren't any progression mechanics for multiplayer. I would love to see a more competitive leaderboard or battle pass or something like that. Hopefully we get that in the future, but for now the multiplayer is good, but just not great yet. Next up is the track variety and design. There are 26 races in total with 3 different classes per race. Each class introduces faster speeds, additional traps and obstacles, number of laps, and different power-up locations, which changes the way you race the course. Generally, the path is the same, but you may be able to utilize a shortcut easier in an A-class race because your speeds are higher, or the boosts are located such that taking that cut becomes an advantage. Basically, that's a long-winded way of saying, although there aren't many races in the game, each class feels like a slightly different event, which provides enough variety for it to not feel stale. In addition to the races, there are tons of quests, world events, mini games, and on-the-go challenges to keep you busy for a long time. The design of the tracks is also great. Each one feels completely unique, whether it be the obstacles, the terrain, or simply the path that you're taking. Every time I loaded into a race, I thought, I wonder what this race has in store for me. Next up, let's talk about the content or the future content of the game. The next year of content is already planned, and they are already trying to sell it to you. Very similar to the way Call of Duty does it. You can buy the season pass and it includes all of the DLCs for the entire year. There should be 4 DLCs coming for this game for the next year, but unfortunately we don't really know what's in those DLCs yet, so I recommend waiting to see what they are before you purchase. And this is also where I'll touch on the subject of microtransactions. The game does feature a microtransaction model. Some say it's pay to win, but I see it completely differently. Basically, you can purchase coins with real money and then use those coins to purchase in-game cash. That cash is used for buying cars and Lego people and accents and all kinds of different things that you can customize your cars with. The thing is, you can also earn that cash through playing the game. So you definitely don't have to make any purchases at this time. You can just earn everything that you want. And since the multiplayer is so limited right now, there really isn't any advantage to having one of those cars in the store. If the rewards for multiplayer become more substantial, then we should maybe take another look at this, but for right now, it's definitely fair. And lastly, my overall experience with the game. It was far and away a positive experience, and I think if they added some better multiplayer features, I might stick around and play. Also, Pending the details of the first DLC, I would be willing to come back and play that content within the season pass because I really enjoyed the single player experience. But now comes the hard part. Do I recommend you buy the game or not? I'm honestly not great at answering this question because I genuinely think that it depends on your financial situation. But I guess I need to say whether I think a $60 game is worth the experience that I had. And the answer is a resounding yes, 100%. The story mode alone was about 12 hours. I have a total of 18 hours played right now, and I'm barely 14% complete with everything there is to do. But what makes it so worth it is that I actually want to go back and complete those activities that I have left. They're fun and challenging, and so it's something that I'd like to do, not just for this review. So there you have it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Shout out to all the Heat 5 members of the channel. I will catch you on the next one. Trigger out.